Hi, welcome to this review of Hornby's Class 92 in the GBRf livery. First thing we're going to do is an unboxing. We'll then do a close-up view of the locomotive, followed by a running session, and then we'll get into a summary, and then we'll get into our scoring and final recommendations. Okay, let's get underway. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at this Class 92 from Hornby. I'm interested in the Class 92. I do a pre-order in with a Cura scale for their model, but I did see this at a very reasonable £75 from Hattons. I think it's available for around about that from a number of other vendors as well. So I do like the livery, and I was keen to take a look and see how this locomotive would fare out, and then also do a comparison with it when I do get the Cura scale model. So at £75, it's effectively a budget option. So let's just see, take a look, and it's the first Hornby I've looked at in a while. So the livery looks pretty nice. Let's take it out of the standard packaging here, and she comes with the usual information sheet. So we can take a look at that again. Now I will be running this under both DC and DCC. So we'll take a look at how she performs under both. So really this is first, just get a first look at the model, and on first look it does look pretty nice. So let's just take her out. So there seems to be a reasonable weight there. Probably it's not as heavy as your Bachmann's potentially, but still a reasonable, certainly a better level of weight than I would have experienced on locomotives like this from Hornby before. I think she's supposed to have a lighting function, so we'll discover that as we go. But I mean, first off, I think just looking at the livery looks pretty nice. It's kind of a matte finish on the livery, and I do kind of like that. There's a lot of legends and labels there. The handrails are painted, so that's fine for a model of this level, and the front grab rail there is painted. It does have what looks to be lighting, so we'll see when we start get going. Is there any lighting there? She's got fixed buffers. Again, that's probably okay, considering the type of model we're talking about. So you know, the level of actual molded detail separately fitted parts is pretty low in terms of the body, but you can see all the labels along the side there, and we will take a more detailed side-on view. And I think the bogie detail and the underbody detail is fine. Just looking up top here, and we've got our pantographs. So I would assume that these guys are posable, and we'll just, yeah, just kind of release them there. So that's and they're not bad. They're not bad. Go on the other side as well. Get him up. There we go. So they go all the way up. They spring all the way up. So that's not too bad. So overall, that's looks reasonable so far. Let's take a little bit of look underneath. So I'll just put these guys back down again, and they do look. They're delicate, but they're certainly not the worst I've seen. So we have all-wheel pickup by the looks of things on 6 wheels. Now, there's the driving bogie here, and I suppose the concern I have is this guy, traction tire here, and another one up here. So 2 of the drive wheels are on the drive bogie. I've got traction tires. I suspect these, yeah, those are not drive wheels, they're just pickups. So 2 of the 4 drive wheels have got traction tires. So anybody who's been on this channel will know what I feel about traction tires because of what they do to your track. So that's disappointing. Okay, well, we'll take a look at that again. So overall, the model for a £75 model, I think it's £88 RRP, isn't bad. And I think so appearance-wise, I don't have any particular issue with it. So I think for that sort of price level, it looks very decent. And it is a nice paint job, and say nice. If you like this livery, then I think you'll probably be pretty pleased. I think it's going to come down to the performance on this locomotive, and for me, it's going to come down to seeing what I can do about those traction tires, because I just really don't fancy the track maintenance associated with these things. So and so it looks like there's a little mini project here if they're going to be got rid of. Okay, so that's the first look. It's not bad. We need to get her out on the track now. Do a bit of testing under DC, and then do a bit of testing under DCC, and then I'll do probably a full running session under DCC, which we'll get into later. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so now we're going to get into a close-up view of the locomotive. So we'll just do a quick run across the locomotive here, take a look at the detail and the paintwork. I think first thing is the paint work is pretty good. I think it's a pretty good quality registration of the livery. I think you will see that there's, on the side of the locomotive and the front of the locomotive, there really are very few separately fitted parts, effectively none. There is some separately fitted parts on the roof. We'll see those in the 360 view. But you know, there is still a lot of detail there, a lot of labelling detail. All of the kind of handrails, etc., are just painted detail, moulded plastic with some painted on. And the venting there that you can see, that's the same. Has some reasonable underbody and bogie detail there as well, including the extra the rail pickups there for the third rail for the electrical power. And again, some nice detail around the door there and the rail freight logo there. So here we're taking the 360 view, and we've got the pantographs actually in their posable state. Now, one issue I think with this is that there really is no interim level of those pantographs, so they either are lowered or they're at this level, which is quite high, and that could be an issue for some people on their layouts. This could run into obstacles due to that. Other pantographs, typically you can set them at a lower level to avoid them actually hitting anything. So I think this could be a locomotive where some of the pantographs get snapped off because unfortunately they hit into a top of a bridge or something like that. There is a reasonable level of detail on the roof, as you can see there. It's not too bad. And overall, the look of the locomotive from a distance is very respectable, and it's pretty fine. And I think the livery is rendered pretty well. I think the side livery there and the front livery is pretty close. They've got the yellow at the front end there. So overall, it's not a bad looking locomotive at this level. And you do have wipers there on the front, and you do have the lighting, of course, as well. So now we're going to get into the running session. So this is really kind of the determining factor for me with locomotives. So running with a 6-rake car rake of ICA wagons here, which are really good running wagons. So these are very light running wagons. We could have probably run with a rake of 20 of these. They're absolutely excellent from Dapol. I think you saw the start up there. It's a little bit rough, and it's the same with the slowdown at the end. And one problem I really found with this locomotive was getting some sort of linearity in the range, the power range for DCC. I tried all sorts of settings for the DCC CV6 and CV5, which determine the maximum speed and the medium speed. And I really couldn't get anything that gave a decent power curve and a reasonable linearity in terms of velocity. Once you hit about 50% power, you hit the maximum speed of the locomotive, and there's really no way I could find to get over that under DCC. So it probably runs better under DC, I would say, and I would give it a higher score under DC than under DCC. Because of that, you don't have that control, and that's a characteristic of lower quality motors and locomotives. And that rough start, I think, is also a characteristic of traction tires. They do tend to impact the slow startup performance like that, and they do impact the DCC performance as well in terms of the responsiveness to DCC commands. I do find that. So we're up to kind of a mid-speed here. It's quite respectable when you get into this range, and it pulled this rake, albeit this is a very high quality, low drag factor on this rake, but it did do well. And when you measure the actual maximum speed versus the loco on its own, now the maximum speed doesn't achieve the prototypical speed. It tops out at about 83 miles per hour when you scale it, which is about 5 miles per hour lower than the prototypical maximum speed. And with the rake here, it does drop that maximum speed by about 4 or 5 miles per hour as well. But overall, not too bad.
we're slowing down now, so you're going to kind of see, unfortunately, a kind of a rough stop as well, just as we had a kind of a rough start. So it's not bad when it's up and running at all the kind of mid-range. It's okay. There is poor linearity, as I said, in terms of control under DCC, but that doesn't affect you if you're a DC runner. So that was the running session. So average at best, I would say. Okay, so now let's get into the summary. So we've been looking at the Hornby Class 92. This is the R3741, which is in the GBRf livery. There are other variants, Class 92 variants from Hornby in the 2021 range. There's the 3740, the Caledonian Sleeper, and the 3742F, which is the DB Cargo Romania, which is interesting, a bit higher priced. I'm not quite sure the reason for that. It comes with a 5-pole skew-wound motor with all-wheel pickup, which is a positive. Only 4 of those are drive wheels, however. So of the total 12 wheels, only 4 are drive wheels, and 2 of those have got traction tires on them. It runs on a minimum radius 2 curves, and you'll probably squeeze it onto a radius 1 as well, but your wagons probably won't run there. It comes as 8-pin DCC ready. The extra features, there's not too many of them. It has this directional lighting feature, which is only the front lights, so you don't have the red marker lights at the rear. So it does have the directional lighting does switch when you switch direction, so it does switch, but there are no rear lights. It does have the posable pantographs, and as I mentioned, you do have that issue that you've either got them in the flat position or you've got them at the maximum extension. There's no way of setting them to some sort of medium level of height, which is a bit of a problem. The unboxed weight comes in at 329 grams, which for a locomotive like this is extremely light. It's about 200 grams lighter than it should be, I would say. The maximum scale speed under DCC is 83 miles per hour, and the current at that speed is 170 milliamps, which is not too bad. Now, the speed does fall off a little bit when you add in the wagons, and as I mentioned during the running session, that speed is not actually high enough. It's not the same. The prototypical speed on this would be in the kind of 85 to 87 miles per hour range, which is kind of unusual. Usually a locomotive like this would probably run faster than the prototypical speed. This one's actually slower, and that is a little bit disappointing. The retail selling price is a very reasonable £75 from a lot of the vendors. You'll see them in the 75, 76 range. Recommended retail price if you buy off the Hornby website would be £84.99, and that's as of May 2021. So let's get into the scoring. So I think the running performance was probably the most disappointing aspect of this. It is impacted by, I would say, a lower spec motor and also the traction tires. Now, I haven't had the opportunity to swap out the traction tires on this, and I have ordered replacement wheels, a replacement wheel set. So I will do that, and if I do that in the future, I'll share those results on another video. And the other option, I think, with this particular locomotive, at £75, that's pretty cheap. It is a potential dummy locomotive, so you could remove the gearing and just run it double-headed with another locomotive, like a Class 66. You'd see them with double-headed with Class 66 locomotives, for example, or with perhaps the upcoming Accurascale Class 92. So it's kind of interesting. I'm even thinking that way. But I will be checking it out without the traction tires and look at the kind of low speed performance in particular, and maybe adding a bit of weight. But the motor, unfortunately, because it's not even achieving the prototypical speed and does drop off when you add some wagons in terms of its top speed, that does worry me. So I think fundamentally the motor on this is underpowered. Appearance and detail, I'm giving a 3.5 star. I think it's reasonable, and it's more than passable for a locomotive in this price range. I think it's a reasonable rendering of the livery overall. Pretty good detail on the roof. The pantographs are actually quite good. So overall, a 3.5 star I think is a very reasonable score. I actually don't have an issue with the livery, which is why I would consider using this maybe as a dummy locomotive in a double-headed configuration. Extras and variants, it's very light on this. I think you've seen the lighting, we talked about that. There's a couple of variants in terms of locomotive type. So really a 2.5 star I think is kind of fitting. There's very little added detailed parts apart from the roof on this locomotive, for example. In terms of build quality and packaging, 4 star, it's fine. It's the standard Hornby packaging. There's no cost reduction there. It's standard packaging for the locomotives. And, you know, the build quality overall is pretty good. And I didn't have any issues with it. So, you know, this locomotive, and I haven't heard of any quality problems with this locomotive. It is pretty simple, so you're not going to have, you know, the more detailed locomotives do have issues perhaps with their detail falling off, etc. You're not going to have that here because you don't really have a lot of extra detail. But, you know, quality-wise, it is fine. I think price value, I've given it a 5-star. I think if you can pick this thing up for £75, I think that's very reasonable for this locomotive. You know, if you don't have an issue with the low speed performance or you're not running it under DCC, for example, I think it's very good value. It is a nice livery. It's a nice rendition of this locomotive as a bargain or low end offering. I think at a 5-star for the value, I think is appropriate. It's in a railroad level of pricing, but I think it is better than the normal railroad locomotives. So from that perspective, I think it's good value. And overall, I'm giving it a 3.5-star. You know, it is better than some of the previous Class 92 offerings that Hornby have had. It does have lighting, for example. I still believe that the traction tires, I think they're probably causing more trouble than they're actually benefiting on this particular locomotive, and I'll hopefully test that out. It is a nicely rendered livery, so from a distance it's a good looking locomotive. When you can't see that, you're not up close and you're not looking at the detail, it looks fine. It's good to see the lighting on this locomotive, even though it is limited. And as I said, it is worth consideration for somebody who's maybe new to the hobby and likes this locomotive type, likes the livery, or if you're on a budget. I think it's respectable, and and at that price, I think it's not a bad purchase. I think if you're a more serious modeler, you will be bitterly disappointed with this locomotive, and you will not be happy with it. So you're better off waiting for the Accurascale Class 92, and we'll see how that fares. It should be significantly better than this in all departments, but it's going to cost you significantly more as well, so you have to take that into account. So as I say, it's a good budget offering, worth consideration if that's where you're at, and it's just unfortunate the performance could have been better, and I do fear that the motor in this is underpowered, and even at this budget level, it's disappointing to see that. For the sake of a couple of extra dollars, they could have probably got a significantly better motor, which is disappointing. Okay, that's my review of the Class 92. I was interested in taking a look at this. I will be reviewing the Accurascale Class 92 when it appears later in the year, do a comparison. This is what it is. It sits in a particular price level, and I think that's where it sits. It doesn't really go outside of that. I think it is an option maybe for double heading, take the gearing out and use it as a dummy locomotive. I think at €75, that's absolutely fine price-wise. So that might be a reason why a more serious modeler might actually purchase this and do that, and I'll probably cover that when I do if I do a video on the traction tire removal. I'll cover the removal of the gearing as well. Okay, thanks for joining today. Hope you enjoyed this review. We'll hopefully see you on the next one, and in the meantime, happy modelling.